Lecture 5 then develops the distinction between mental causation and physical causation. And Russell starts out with the standard view of what causation is in order to criticize it and offer a new alternative way of thinking about how causation works. The standard view of causation, and this is a quote from the very beginning of Lecture 5, the traditional conception of cause and effect is one which modern science shows to be fundamentally erroneous and requiring to be replaced by a different notion, that of laws of change. In the traditional conception, a particular event A caused a particular event B, and by this it was implied that given any event B, some earlier event A could be discovered which had a relation to it such that, and here are the two conditions of the standard view. 1, whenever A occurred, it was followed by B. And 2, in this sequence there was something necessary, not a mere de facto occurrence of A first and then B. So you had this idea of a necessary relationship between A and B. Every time A happened, B had to happen, and necessarily when A happens, then B happens. And Russell wants to say that this is really a problematic way to think about causation because we don't have this necessary connection. Hume was the first one who poked a hole in the idea of a necessary connection. Back in the day, they thought it had to be like a rational relation between cause and effect, and Hume was looking at this and going, you know, there's nothing about A that requires that B happen. It can't be necessary. Hume proposed that they were just associated events. Now we have other ways to connect A's and B's to think about causation in a more complex sort of way, in a way that's closer to the idea of traditional causation as more than just an association of two events. What Russell is looking at particularly is the problem of always, that A always causes B. And he says, look, whenever you have this relationship between A and B, something could intervene between A and B that would affect this relationship. And so we ought to think, instead of this A always causing B, we should think about A usually or probably or mostly is a condition that causes B. Instead of this standard view of causation with always a necessary relation between cause and effect, Russell suggests that we think about laws of change. Things are related to one another over time in various patterns. And the laws of change can involve probabilities that are quite regular. So for example, if I have a ball and I drop it, the ball's going to fall. There is some very small chance that the ball could fly off into space. You know, the laws of physics get disrupted. There's a meteor that intervenes between the time that I drop it and the time that it falls. Something could happen that would make the ball fly up in space. We don't know what kinds of events could happen between between cause and effect. So we should think about patterns and regularities rather than a kind of absolute cause preceding an absolute effect. And this way of thinking about laws of change then is part of what is important in terms of connecting and distinguishing what count as physical laws from what count as psychological laws. And so think about this example of the star. And this is on page 69. Russell is describing what it is to be a star and what it is to be you, or he kind of wants to get the human out of it, what it is to be a camera. Because remember, he wants his description of the mind to be a third-person behavioral description. So in that way, it doesn't matter whether it's a camera or whether it is you and your brain. That is the distinction here between the mental and the physical. And so here's what he says in terms of thinking about what it is to be a star versus what it is to be the camera. We can organize the phenomena in two sorts of ways. One, we can collect together all the happenings in one place as is done by photography so far as light is concerned. And 2, we can collect together all the happenings in different places, which are connected in the way that common sense regards as being due to their emanating from one object. So the first is collecting together the happenings in one place, namely in the camera. So we're looking at all the different stars and the way in which the one camera is taking a picture of all the stars. The second is collecting together all the happenings, so all of the different cameras or all of the different people looking at one particular thing, one particular star. So you've got these 2 people here pointing at the same star. So that's what it is to be the star. What it is to be an object is to collect all of the happenings to be that object. So we collect together, and this is returning to the Russell quote, 1, the appearances of different stars in a given place. That's the camera or you. And number 2, all the appearances of a given star in different places. And that's what constitutes the star.